Doomslayer versus Rhino from Warframe. The last video we did on the channel that was versus based, where we took Revenant from Apex versus Revenant from Warframe, had a lot of people kind of upset. The fact that I would even consider putting those two up against each other. I really just did it for a bit of fun, and now I want to do it again, but kind of do the opposite. Instead of throwing someone at a Warframe who is sort of decisively going to lose, this being a Warframe channel and most of you guys being pretty aware as to how broken the Warframes are within lore, I figured this time we would take one of the heaviest hitting Warframes and grant them an opponent that is actually worthy. Some people are going to be on the fence about this one. Some may say immediately that Doomslayer wins with ease. Some may say that Rhino immediately wins with ease. I'm going to do my best to enlighten everyone of fans of both games as to just how insane of a fight this could be, and how it may even be closer than you think. On my first glance at looking at what these two characters could do in a fight versus each other, my initial instinct was that Doomslayer would stomp, but I wanted to do a bit more research, not only into the Doomslayer lore, but also do a bit of digging into general Tenno and Warframe lore, because Rhino himself doesn't have too much to go off of. But I found some pretty conclusive evidence that this Warframe could easily hang in this fight, and by the end of this video you may agree or disagree. This is all just for fun, don't get too mad, alright? Everyone's going to have their own opinions on this, me included. You guys know how these series go, this is going to be a blast. And of course it is worth noting this fight is based off of how well these two would do against each other in a lore accurate fight, not necessarily in game. As we know, both Warframes and Doomslayer are heavily nerfed within their gameplay, although some elements from the gameplay do traverse into their lore as well, which of course we will cover when necessary. And firstly we're going to cover the Doomslayer. He is of course formerly just a man, or rather a marine. We won't cover his entire story, but basically his family and his rabbit were murdered by demons when hell made its way to Earth via a portal, and he fought through pretty much any and every demon that stood in his way, a man simply too angry to die. He was later granted power from a machine called the Divinity Machine, this power being described to match his will, and it basically turned him into a god. You could class this as immortality, considering that he fought demons for eons and won. So already this guy has insane power and experience, and we're only just getting started. It's funny that he has a Praetor suit that I technically wouldn't even need to cover because his physical body is technically stronger than this thing, but just for scaling and detail needs I have to cover the fact that the Praetor suit could easily withstand stuff way more powerful and dangerous than nuclear power, and even stand on the sun. This thing is pretty much impenetrable, and that's just from the suit alone, not even getting into his physical strength. And in case you're wondering where I'm getting this information from, the Argent energy he crushes in his hands in the game have way more power in them than any nuclear power plant, and he just takes it like it's nothing. I will say there's a bit of a strange thing that happens within his lore, and there's a point where he somehow gets baited into a trap and ends up buried beneath rubble in a tomb. I'm going to kind of gloss over this because I feel like this is just sort of like a stupid ass writing moment. Considering the strength and feats of this character, I don't understand why this was ever a thing, especially considering that I'm pretty sure this is after he has the power from the Divinity Machine. But anyway, moving past this, he is broken out, and now let's quickly cover his weaponry. We know he has many weapons he has access to within the games. To name the few, he's got the slug pistol, his super shotgun, which is of course very iconic, a ballista, and then the super demonic weapons like the Unmaker and the BFG 9000. The BFG 9000 did shoot a hole in Mars when it was amplified by a cannon. I don't know how relevant that could be in this fight because he's not going to be sitting on a cannon, but either way, the BFG 9000 packs quite the punch. In the game, he also possesses Berserker mode, where he basically goes full beast, melee only, and just rips everything apart with his hands. And within lore, he has been stated to be able to do this against even larger opponents. And a lot of Doom enjoyers will state that this is probably how he is 24/7 within the lore, just constantly being in Berserker mode and possessing that infinite strength that he has. He basically has infinite speed. This is due to all of the proof from the fact that he can dodge missiles, lightning, and let alone those attacks. The fact that he has fought against multiversal level beings and won, such as the Dark Lord, who was the creator of hell and all of everything, that makes him a multiversal level threat. And if all this wasn't enough, I then have to talk about the number one most important thing that I think he possesses for this fight, which is his crucible blade. You're going to understand very quickly why this is important in the fight once we get to the Warframe segment. The crucible has immortality nullifying properties once used. Of course he uses this on the icon of Sin to kill it, leaving the blade in its head, but yeah, even just briefly glossing over all of these feats and strengths he has, you can see very quickly how broken the Doomslayer is. And before I did any sort of extra research into the strength and power of the tenno and warframes, you can very quickly see why I thought this would be an instant mismatch. Which is surprising to say, because normally whenever we do warframe matchups, it seems to be that 99% of any enemy you could find from a video game or pop culture usually just doesn't stand a chance, because warframes have just as much power creep in their lore as they do in the game. But anyway, it's time to move on to Rhino. I think some important context to start with is what the warframes technically are, because whilst Doomguy started as a basic marine who then became a god, that's a very simple explanation, but the warframes definitely require a little bit more detail, and they're going to need more detail here so you guys can understand why this matchup is even being made. So let's quickly cover what the tenno and the warframes are and why they're so strong. So of course, Rhino is one of many warframes or space ninjas. The warframes are humans turned machines slash cyborgs. This may not apply to Rhino specifically, as there are said to be more than one way in which the warframes were formed, but the one which we know about is that Dax warriors, humans, were infected with mutation, thus their skin and organs were mutated and turned to steel, thus creating the warframes and granting them godlike abilities. Their insane shield, health, armor values, self-healing due to the infested flesh. They are basically made of indestructible metal, and they are impenetrable to physical and cosmic attacks due to the gift of the void from transference. Transference being the link between tenno and warframe. I don't want to bore you with all the lore around Kuva and Oro as to how both the tenno and the frames are immortal, but they are both immortal. And the reason why frames even exist in order to be controlled by the tenno is because the frames are way more durable and stronger, despite the significant power levels of the tenno at base. And of course, any warframe players know that if a warframe is to miraculously somehow die within combat, the tenno can simply retransfer and send out their warframe again, hence proving they are immortal. And to people that haven't played Warframe, the tenno are basically the crazy super powerful space children that control these warframes remotely from across the galaxy if need be, and they can even conjure themselves into the fight when needed, basically making any fight kind of a 2-on-1 situation. Let's say you hurt a warframe real bad, it could just transfer into its child form and attack you that way, then transfer back, and within the lore this is way more powerful and considered complete immortality. Another thing worth considering here is the sheer level of weaponry that Rhino and all the frames have access to. Whilst I do think this fight will maybe come down to just one or two specific weapons, the warframes have access to assault rifles, SMGs, chainsaws, nunchucks, greatswords, chaining beam weapons, grenade launchers comparable to that of the BFG 9000. The list goes on and on and on, and the differences in weaponry access, this is a big win for Rhino here. He has way more options and stuff that I would consider just as powerful, if not more powerful. And that is why I was dwelling on the crucible so much earlier, which of course we'll continue to yap about in a second. But yeah, it's safe to say Rhino's going to have a big fuck off sword of his own if he wants one. Now we're going to get into Rhino's specific abilities and strengths, and when we get onto this section you're going to very quickly realise why I've chosen Rhino to be the pick against Doomslayer, because I do think Doomslayer would actually easily stomp a large amount of the Warframe roster, but you're going to gradually see here why I think Rhino actually stands a chance. His first ability, Rhino Charge. It is a basic Rhino Charge forward, and I have no reason to dwell on how this functions in game because this ability actually has a little bit of lore behind it. Within the Rhino Prime description, we can see in the lore that at one point he charges forward and turns his enemies into red mist. Basically exactly what you'd imagine to happen if Superman was to fly full force into a human being. So already Rhino has massive amounts of strength, durability and insane speed all within his first ability, let alone the fact that he has insane parkour skills due to being a warframe, but we know Doomslayer has that too. And to address the speed, I will say Doomslayer, most definitely, just based on his feats and lore, is without doubt in my opinion faster than Rhino, but I have a point coming up that I think evens things out a little bit or makes this fight still competitive if you wanted to immediately assume that just because Doomslayer has infinite speed that this isn't even remotely possible to set up as a fight. The Warframes are insanely quick, so is Rhino, but the Doomslayer is faster in this section. We'll get back to this in a bit. However, his next ability is in my opinion where you're going to start seeing some stalemates here. Iron Skin basically renders Rhino even more immortal than a Warframe would already be considered. Casting Iron Skin renders you invulnerable for a temporary period of time. During this stage, any damage you take will be built up into HP of said Iron Skin. Once the duration is over, you will gain that HP back as Iron Skin HP, which doesn't count as damage to your Warframe. And once that is depleted, you'll also get iframes again. Iframes meaning invincibility frames or invulnerable frames. And then you can simply recast it, rinse and repeat. So think of it as going invulnerable, separate scaling HP value that has nothing to do with your actual health, invulnerable, invulnerable, then rinse and repeat. And this isn't even including the fact that mods also are lore accurate. Rolling Guard is a mod that allows you to go invulnerable temporarily after a roll. It does have a cooldown, but this cooldown wouldn't matter due to Iron Skin, and simply this means that you can combine the iframes and immortality of Iron Skin with Rolling Guard for just constant spammable immortality, let alone the fact we've already gone over the fact that Warframes are considered to be indestructible and immortal to begin with. You can see where I'm going with this. This fight is starting to look like Unstoppable Force meets a movable object. His third ability is Roar, in which Rhino roars so loudly he increases the power of his weaponry, making him simply deal more damage, kind of like his equivalent of, I guess, Doomslayer's Berserker. And then the final ability, which in my opinion is helping out in the case that since Doomslayer is most definitely faster than Rhino, he's going to want to use his fourth ability, Stomp. Now, even though everything I've said so far may make it seem as though, oh, Rhino actually has a significant chance against the Doomslayer here, I think this ability is what grants him a chance. Right now he is coming across as a bit of an invulnerable punching bag. The Warframe is impossible to kill and will basically be just a pain in the ass for Doomslayer, because I think Doomslayer has way better offense due to his speed and strength from his natural Berserker mode and godlike power. So how the hell is Rhino going to keep up with the speed of the Doomslayer? Rhino's Stomp makes absolutely no sense because of how powerful it is. He stomps the ground so hard that he stops time. Not only did I fail science in school, so I can't even begin to try to make sense of this, but I'm pretty certain this isn't even actually a possibility or remotely scientifically correct. This probably just works within the science of the Warframe universe. But stomping the ground so hard you stop time, this is just unholy levels of power, and I'm hoping you guys can now understand why I've made this matchup. This is just a ridiculous feat because it doesn't even make sense. What are you doing, bro? Fucking stomping the planet you're standing on into its own axis? It's badass, and any enemy that seems to be caught in the radius gets flung up in the air and held in slow motion. Literally stopped within the air, basically. And I don't see a reason as to why this wouldn't work against the Doomslayer, regardless of how fast he is. So if you say the Doomslayer is too quick for Rhino, what happens if he just stomps, you know? Little time stoppage. Being able to stop time is an extremely dangerous ability, and that's where this matchup starts to become a bit more leveled out until we finally get back to the Crucible Blade. The Crucible Blade itself has immortality nullifying abilities. If we look at Warframe, the in-game ability nullifiers, they can turn off Iron Skin, but they can't turn off the invulnerability granted from Rolling Guard. Meaning you can roll up, be immortal, one-shot a nullifier from inside his nullifying bubble, and then cast your Iron Skin. And it's not as if Doomslayer has a bubble of nullifying ability, it's just a sword. Can you see what I'm getting at here? Rhino has plenty of immortality to work with here, just based off of mods and his Iron Skin. And we've even seen Warframes rip out massive swords from their chest within the second Dream Quest. When I tell you these guys are immortal, they are immortal. But then it's just going to be a back and forth of Doomslayer has a fucking Crucible. So if he has the speed advantage, gets close and lobs the sword into the Warframe, is that Warframe going to die? Will its invulnerability or immortality be negated? Simply put, it goes on who the fucking author wants to win the fight. It's a 50-50 as to whether or not the Crucible works here, because it seems like Warframes just have levels upon levels of immortality. We've got mods like Rolling Guard, we've got infinite ability usage, Iron Skin, frames that are considered immortal anyway and can take massive swords to the chest, rip them out, transfer to their operator, transfer back to the Warframe, respawn the Warframe. Just an endless loop of impossible to kill scenarios. Doomguy basically has to fight off an immovable object who cannot die, both within Rhino and his Tenno. So what am I getting at? Am I making a case for Rhino winning this fight? No. What this comes down to is basically Doomslayer technically wins the fight due to his greater speed, strength, and his immortality nullifying sword, the Crucible. I can see it more logical that he would be able to get close and use the sword due to these abilities, and of course his godlike power, but the Warframe just isn't going to die. The Warframe and Tenno are in fact immortal in many different ways, and even though the Warframe has more access to weaponry and has his own insane attacks, even with like a Rhino Stomp going down and locking the Doomslayer in place temporarily, I don't think he's going to make a dent in the Doomslayer at all, and I think this fight is actually just a stalemate that Doomslayer wins fight-wise. Like, you know, if we had some judges with some scorecards, I think we've got 3 10-8 rounds going straight to the Doomslayer here, and then by the end of it, both of them are still standing with no specks of damage on them. I'm pretty confident Doomslayer wins this fight very easily, just to the sheer power creep of his own feats, his speeds, his suit, his infinite strength, his berserker mode. I think the big point here is that he has access to the crucible, which in my opinion sways this fight. But yeah, Warframes and the Tenno are immortal. They cannot die, they always come back. Even if you wanted to make the argument that Doomslayer is just scaling so far above that he could easily hawk the Warframe and get rid of him, the Warframe will come back just straight away. And it may not even be Rhino next time, it could be someone else. Whatever Warframe the Tenno decides to pick. So yeah, I see this fight as a stalemate. Feel free to yell at me in the comment sections. This is purely for fun. Do you guys agree with it being a stalemate? Do you think my power scaling was correct? Once again, I think Doomslayer wins very convincingly, but I think it is a stalemate in the sense that nobody here can die. Doomslayer is the unstoppable force, and Rhino is the immovable object. Let me know who you think wins in the comment section. Maybe I've missed some things. Maybe you guys do think Rhino has a greater chance and I'm missing important notes of lore. I of course tried to make a case for him against arguably one of the most powerful characters in gaming. The way I see this matchup is very comparable to Kratos and Doomguy. That is of course a matchup that's been done many times across YouTube, and Kratos pretty much always loses, but most people would agree that these two would simply stare at each other, nod, and then carry on with their day. And if any Warframe players are offended by the fact that, say, Doomguy would win this fight, it is to the merit of Rhino that I am 100% certain that Rhino could easily dog walk the entire Doom universe, other than Doomguy, if he wanted to. I'll let you guys argue about that in the comment section. Anyway, let me know if you guys enjoyed the video. Try to keep it civil in the comments, please. I know you guys are probably going to be arguing with me and other people. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to subscribe, like the video, check me out on Twitch, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.